Bro, imagine beating a game 19 times, then spending months grinding your 20th run until your character hits level 9999 before the main story even starts. Sounds broken, right? Then you click play and get transported into the game, but instead of becoming your OP character, you wake up as the demon king he's supposed to kill. Even worse, your own demon generals want to murder you, and a level 9999 version of your old character is coming for your head. So how does this weak demon king survive? By farming. Yep, farming. And somehow, this guy turns out to be the biggest menace in the entire game. Jangcheol always hated his name. Jangcheol. Seriously, what kind of name was that? He used to be just a normal student from Korea, but that was yesterday. Now, somehow, he had become Kratos, the demon king and final boss of the game he had been playing. Yep, the most cliché thing possible. The game was called Blood Paladin, and its main goal was simple: wake up the hero who had been sleeping for years, basically like a male version of Cinderella. But Jangcheol had one huge problem. He hadn't entered the game as the hero. He had become the final boss who was supposed to get killed by him. Before he could even fully understand what was happening, the door opened and a butler walked in. It was Zephyrus, and he calmly informed the demon king that all preparations for war were complete. Outside, countless demons were already waiting and screaming for their lord. Among them were Azuret, the Blood Prince, Sergi, the Ice Monarch, Hearttalk, the Archduke of Shadows, and also the head butler, and of course Baal, the classic muscle-head warrior at level 539. With all the strongest demons gathered before him, Kratos stepped forward and announced that he had something important to say as the ruler of demonkind. Everyone expected an order to begin the war. Instead, he told them the war was cancelled. From now on, they would focus on harvesting crops and raising livestock. The entire army went silent. Then the demons started losing their minds. Farming? Seriously? They had prepared for war, and their demon king was suddenly telling them to grow vegetables and take care of animals? Some of them called the whole thing ridiculous. But the moment Kratos gave them a cold, deadly stare, everyone immediately shut up. Still, Jangcheol had a very good reason for stopping the war. Right then, a notification appeared in front of him. Someone had started a new playthrough of Blood Paladin for the 20th time. The player's name was Kim, and he was level 9999. Jangcheol instantly knew what that meant. He was going to die. Again, he was the final boss, and this absolute monster of a player was coming straight for him. The crazy part was that Jangcheol knew exactly how terrifying Kim was, because before all this happened, that player had actually been him. Jangcheol had graduated from the farming course at Korea University and become an incredibly successful farmer. He was seriously good at what he did, so good that even professors kept asking him to help with their research and project. Whenever someone needed help in the field, they came looking for him too. At first, being talented sounded great, but eventually, it turned into a nightmare. The better he was, the more work everyone dumped on him. He had basically become the #1 unpaid slave. He did the hard work, while other people happily took the credit. After years of that nonsense, Jangcheol was completely tired of it. His motivation was gone. His life felt boring, and he just wanted something exciting for once. So, he started playing video games. He wanted to feel the thrill of working towards something that actually mattered to him. That's how he found Blood Paladin, and somehow, he became completely addicted. Jangcheol ended up finishing the entire game 19 times. 19 times. He was exhausted, but every single run felt worth it. By then, he knew the game better than almost anyone. For his 20th playthrough, he decided to go completely crazy and choose hell difficulty. He spent his time grinding, maxing out everything, and collecting ridiculously powerful equipment. His character was already completely broken, and there was no doubt that he was ready to destroy the game one more time. After wondering how many years he had wasted becoming this obsessed, Jangcheol saw the start button appear on the screen. Naturally, he clicked it without even thinking twice. But this time, something went completely wrong. The monitor suddenly started glowing, and before Jangcheol could react, he felt like an invisible force was pulling him toward it. In an instant, his soul was ripped away from his body and sucked straight into the screen. The next thing he knew, he was flying high above a massive forest. Something strange was shining in the sky, and Jangcheol was completely confused. What the hell is going on? He tried to calm himself down. If this was really his soul, then maybe falling wouldn't kill him. Then he looked around and saw something that made his heart stop. The Tower of Life. There was no way he could mistake it. He had actually entered the world of Blood Paladin. Jangcheol immediately got excited because he knew exactly where he was. He spotted a tomb nearby and rushed toward it, thinking this was where he would finally take control of Kim, his overpowered character. But when he reached the place and came face to face with the blonde guy holding a staff, he was shocked. The character looked completely different from what he had imagined. Honestly, Jangcheol thought the outfit looked awful. The moment he had that thought, his soul suddenly changed direction and flew away. Jangcheol immediately started panicking. Wait, not there, anywhere but there. But it was already too late. Because of one stupid thought about the character's clothes, he lost his chance to become Kim. Instead, his soul crashed straight into the body of the one character he absolutely did not want to become, the Demon King Kratos. Jangcheol couldn't believe it. He had spent years mastering the game, reached level 9999, and created the strongest character possible, only to lose everything because he thought someone's outfit looked stupid. Now, instead of controlling the most powerful player in the game, he was stuck inside the final boss who Kim was destined to kill. Meanwhile, the demons around him were starting to get suspicious. Zephyrus overheard several of them whispering that maybe Kratos wasn't as powerful as he used to be. One vampire-looking demon suggested that they should join forces, cut off the Demon King king's head and take the throne for themselves. But Hartok cleared his throat and asked the obvious question, and what if he isn't weaker? If they were wrong, all 4 of them could end up dead for trying something so stupid. Sergi immediately said she would only agree to the plan if Azurette was the first one to attack. Of course, she wasn't dumb enough to volunteer herself. As for Ball, he couldn't care less about the throne, the war, or any secret rebellion. The giant musclehead was just hungry and wanted food. And while the strongest demons argued about whether they should betray their ruler, Jangcheol stood there with a much bigger problem on his mind. Somewhere in this world, his own level 9999 character was preparing for the 20th playthrough. And this time, Jangcheol wasn't the one controlling that overpowered monster. He was the Demon King standing in its way. If he wanted to survive, he had to change the story before Age Kimchi reached him. So, for now, war was cancelled. The demons were going to farm, raise livestock, and somehow build a stronger kingdom before the real nightmare arrived. Kratos had one simple problem. Everyone around him was starting to think the Demon King had become weak. One of the demons even stood up and said, "If I can prove the Demon King really got weaker, would you guys have the guts to kill him?" And instantly, the others started smiling. "If you prove it, we're in." Unfortunately for Kratos, Zephyro heard the whole conversation and immediately ran to report it. "My dear Demon King, bad news. The demons are getting together to take your head. They think you've become weak." Kratos started shaking. If all 4 generals attacked him together, he was dead. But if he acted scared, he was also dead. And to make things worse, there was another problem waiting outside the castle. What happened to Age Kimchi, the guy he possessed before? Was his body just lying somewhere, or did something else happen? Zephyro then showed him a recording from a magic orb. The footage came from a tomb, and what Kratos saw made his heart drop. A blonde kid was slaughtering demons like they were nothing. He even ripped out a monster's eye and stared directly into the recording. Kratos instantly understood one thing. Whoever was inside that body was absolutely insane. So now he was trapped. Stay in the castle, and the generals might kill him for looking weak. Go into the human world, and that level 9999 monster might kill him instead. The poor guy was almost crying. "I joined this game to have a little fun and happiness. Why am I getting hunted from every direction?" But after panicking for a while, he finally stood up. First things first, he needed to deal with the food problem and calm everyone down. Zephyro asked, "Where are you going, Your Majesty?" Kratos awkwardly apologized for not explaining earlier and said he was going to find some land to start a small farm. Zephyro just stared at him like he had completely lost his mind. Honestly, Kratos was confused too. A Demon King starting a farm? What kind of nonsense was this? Zephyro reminded him that the old Demon King was arrogant and never apologized to anyone. So why was he suddenly acting like a normal person? Kratos found Zephyro strange as well. In the original story, Zephyro was basically just a background character. He appeared once and later died fighting the hero. But somehow, readers liked him because before dying, he apologized to the Demon King for being too weak. Everyone thought, wow, this guy is actually loyal. But now that same loyal guy was standing here, being incredibly annoying, laughing about how fast the Demon King had lost his pride. Kratos tried to scare him, but Zephyro didn't care at all. He just asked where this magical farmland was supposed to be. After all, the nearby land was literally called the Land of Death. Nothing could grow there. Kratos calmly said, "I know, but with my current abilities, I can bring it back to life." Then he knelt down, grabbed some dirt, and actually tasted it. Zephyro immediately started taking notes. Unfortunately, it seems the Demon King has mentally collapsed and is now eating dirt. Kratos told him to stop writing, but Zephyro said it was his job to keep records, especially since his lord was clearly acting weird. Kratos spat the dirt out and realized the soil had almost no nutrients. Then he remembered something important. Plants need nitrogen, and while the air is full of it, plants can't just use it directly, but lightning can help turn that nitrogen into something useful for the soil. And luckily for him, Kratos' strongest power was lightning. Perfect, in theory. He told Zephyro to step back and prepared to use his blood strike. The first time he tried, nothing happened because he remembered the skill had activated under completely different conditions before, so he took a deep breath and cut his hand again. Ah, damn, that hurts. Kratos couldn't understand how the hero used this crazy skill so casually. Then he suddenly felt something strange. He turned around and saw his entire crew staring at him, and their faces said exactly what he didn't want to see: suspicion. Kratos nearly jumped out of his skin. Zephyro immediately said, "Yep, I'm now 100% sure. The Demon King has gotten weaker." Kratos turned toward him in panic. "Are you trying to get me killed too?" Then someone from behind asked, "Lord Kratos, are you feeling a little strange today?" That was the moment Kratos realized it. These guys really might kill him. So he shouted, "Enough." No matter how much his hand hurt, it was still better than dying. He forced himself to activate the blood strike, and this time it finally worked, sort of. Instead of looking cool, he mostly just ended up covered in his own blood while suffering like crazy. And somehow, that only made everyone even more suspicious. Meanwhile, far away from the castle, Age Kimchi was walking alone. He still remembered his previous lives and knew he had walked this same path more than 10 times before. In the past, he always had something called the Summon of Duty. It gave him a purpose and told him what he needed to do. But now, it was gone. Completely gone. For the first time after all those lives, he had no mission, no duty, and no idea what he was supposed to live for anymore. So while Kratos was desperately trying not to get killed by his own generals, Age Kimchi simply stood there alone, lost in thought, wondering what came next. Back with Kratos, things were getting seriously bad. The whole group was staring him down, and Azurette stepped forward with a cold look. So you're really the great Demon King? The strongest of all demon lords? Kratos was freaking out inside because he knew Azeroth was insanely powerful, while he currently couldn't even use most of his skills properly. But Azeroth misunderstood his silence completely. He could feel an unbelievable pressure coming from Kratos. The fight hadn't even started, yet the Demon King looked so calm that Azeroth's whole body started trembling. Still, he forced himself to ask, "Do you really think you can fight all four of us?" Kratos looked around and immediately realized three of them had already hidden behind a tree. Seriously? He was completely alone. Everyone else just stood there watching him like, "You should have known this was hopeless." Kratos tried to remind them that they were all demons, but they simply answered, "Yeah, obviously." Then Zephyros suddenly pulled out a projector and showed them the rules from demon law. According to the rules, a fight like this could only end in one way: death. There was no quitting and no running away. Azeroth, who had been scared of Kratos just seconds ago, took a deep breath and told himself not to panic. The Demon King had become weaker. This was his chance. Meanwhile, Kratos was shaking inside. What do I do? What do I do? He had tested his power earlier, and judging by that last attack, maybe he wasn't as weak as he thought. But before he could think any further, Azeroth charged straight at him. Kratos instantly remembered fighting this guy in the game. Azeroth mainly had two attacks, a side slash and a straight thrust. Normally, dodging them should have been impossible, but somehow, Kratos moved without even thinking. He dodged. Azeroth missed completely. Kratos was surprised, but then he noticed something familiar. Azeroth still had the exact same habits as he did in the game. Whenever his foot pointed forward in a certain way, a direct attack was coming next. Kratos dodged again and slid backward. One of the demons watching was completely shocked. That was terrifying. If he had moved even a little wrong, his arm would have been gone. Azeroth attacked again. Kratos dodged again. Then another attack came, and once again Kratos avoided it. Slowly, he started smiling. Every single move was just like the game. The first time he fought Azeroth, he thought the battle was impossible. Azeroth was fast, tricky, and loved using fake attacks to confuse his opponent. But Kratos had died fighting him again and again. Once, twice, 10 times, eventually more than 100 times. After repeating the fight so many times, he had learned every habit and every attack. By his 19th complete playthrough, he had even challenged himself to beat Azeroth without getting hit once. And now, standing in front of him for real, Kratos finally understood something important. Azeroth might be strong, but he couldn't touch him. There was absolutely no way this guy was landing a hit. The demons hiding nearby watched in disbelief as Kratos casually dodged from side to side. He wasn't even attacking back. From their point of view, the Demon King clearly hadn't lost any power. He was just playing with poor Azeroth. Azeroth became furious, while Kratos came to a completely different conclusion. I might not be strong enough to defeat this guy, but I definitely don't have to die either. The moment he understood that the same rules from the game worked in this world, a familiar system window suddenly appeared in front of him. Kratos instantly recognized it. It looked exactly like the pop-up system from the game. The message congratulated him for successfully dodging attacks through pure focus, and then gave him a reward that only playable characters could receive: the ability to select a target. A small green mark appeared, and Kratos immediately knew what it meant. He could finally use one of his special skills properly. Without wasting a second, he slashed forward and activated Blood Strike. This time, it actually worked. A burst of lightning shot out and blasted Azeroth, sending electricity through his body, while the other demons stood there, with their mouths wide open. Azeroth dropped to his knees, shaking badly, but Kratos was even more surprised than anyone. Wait, he's still alive? In the game, this attack usually meant instant death, so Kratos figured he should probably hit him again just to make sure. But the demons watching completely misunderstood what was happening. They whispered in horror, "He's holding back on purpose. He's using only a tiny bit of his power so Azeroth won't die too quickly." Meanwhile, Kratos was desperately trying to figure out how he was actually supposed to finish this guy. Then the system chimed again with another message. Apparently his attack had destroyed Azeroth's clothes, and now the guy was left without his armor. Because of that, Kratos unlocked a new feature: armor removal. He quickly opened his inventory and saw all the equipment he had used in the game was still there. Good to know, but that wasn't important right now. His biggest problem was still Azeroth. The guy was down, but somehow Kratos still wasn't strong enough to finish him easily. Then Kratos looked at Azeroth lying on the ground and suddenly got an idea. If he couldn't beat him with a normal attack, there was another option. Azeroth was already down there, completely exposed. Kratos slowly raised his hand and thought, what if I just hit him with lightning? Kratos suddenly came up with a crazy idea. If lightning hit the ground, the impact could help create the nitrogen his dead soil needed. Honestly, the guy was starting to sound like a farming genius. The other demons, however, had no idea what he was planning. They were all hiding behind trees and shaking in fear. Kratos called out to Sergi and ordered her to tie Azeroth up. Sergi was confused. Why are you going this far? He already lost. Why do you still want to humiliate him? But Kratos didn't explain anything. He tied Azeroth upright and used him as the perfect target for his lightning. Suddenly, Azeroth opened his eyes. Since he was immortal, he had recovered again. He immediately started thinking, the Demon King really has gotten weaker. If he was still at full power, I wouldn't even be alive right now. But he barely had time to enjoy that thought before another bolt of lightning came crashing down and shut him up. The demons watching were terrified, thinking Kratos was torturing Azeroth for fun, while Kratos was secretly celebrating because the lightning was doing exactly what he needed for the soil. Then he gave another order to Hardtalk: cover the whole area in a thick fog. Hardtalk was stunned. From his point of view, Kratos wanted to make the ground wet, so the next lightning strike would hurt hurt Azarath even more. This is a completely new level of torture, he thought. Soon, a thick fog covered the land, and tiny drops of water started falling everywhere. Then came another lightning strike. Kratos himself winced because using Blood Strike still hurt like crazy every single time he had to activate it. Meanwhile, Zephyro and the other demons were getting more and more scared of him. But Kratos didn't care about them. He was too busy thinking about his future farm. The soil was slowly becoming richer, and if things continued like this, he might actually get a good harvest. More lightning crashed down, and the bright bolts stretched across the horizon. Later, Kratos checked the soil again and saw that it was improving, but there was another problem. The soil was still too packed together, and the nutrients wouldn't spread properly. He needed to loosen it up and add the perfect natural material. His answer was simple: fertilizer. More specifically, manure. So Kratos immediately ordered everyone to bring him as much animal waste as they could find. The demons standing there, already covered in dirt and blood, were horrified. They honestly thought he was planning to dump it all over poor Azarath. Meanwhile, deep inside a forest, aged Kimchi was walking alone when he suddenly heard someone crying for help. He looked over and found two suspicious guys who looked like cheap copies of Javier and Lloyd. One of them claimed they had been attacked by goblins and desperately needed help. Kimchi gave them one look, and both guys immediately started shaking. The suspicious guy quickly said, "Relax, I'm definitely not suspicious," which of course only made him look even more suspicious. Then he explained that his friend had injured his leg. Kimchi simply threw the injured guy over his shoulder and told the other one to lead the way. Their names were even suspicious. One introduced himself as Riva Gavier, while the other called himself Lloyd. Yeah, totally believable. One of them asked Kimchi who the strange blonde guy was, and Kimchi gave the most honest answer possible. That's exactly what I'm trying to figure out. Back at the Demon King's castle, Hardtalk had a completely different problem. Where are we supposed to suddenly find a huge pile of manure? Siri had no idea, and the entire request was disgusting to her. Bale groaned that he hadn't eaten in ages, while Hardtalk quickly pointed out that this wasn't the time for random excuses. Even if they somehow found something, he definitely wasn't volunteering his own. Their next idea was somehow even worse. They planned to force some low-ranked demons to produce what Kratos needed. The poor demons were already suffering, sitting around and desperately trying to give results. But there was one major issue. They hadn't eaten enough. The whole Demon King's territory was so poor that nobody had any food. Hardtalk lost his patience and came up with a terrible idea, but Bale stopped him immediately. If you hurt him like that, how is he supposed to give us what we need? Hardtalk paused and admitted that Bale actually had a point. Then he came up with an even crazier idea involving feeding the demon so he could eventually produce more fertilizer. Bale just stared at him in complete disbelief while the poor little demon curled up in fear. The two were about to start fighting when Kratos suddenly appeared and blasted both of them with lightning. Are you idiots seriously thinking only humans and demons can produce fertilizer? Everyone went silent. Sitting there like he was teaching the most normal lesson in the world, Kratos explained that all kinds of waste could still contain useful nutrients. They just needed to turn it into proper fertilizer for the soil. Zephyro asked what fertilizer even was, and Kratos explained that it was used to make land healthier for farming. Normally, you could make it from old plants, wood scraps, eggshells, bird droppings, and other natural material. The problem was that they barely had anything available, so Kratos asked for a map. Seconds later, it appeared in his hands exactly like he expected. It was the same map from the game. The moment he saw it, he remembered a certain region filled with a huge number of birds. Sure, these birds were probably demonic and dangerous, but there were so many of them that Kratos knew one thing for sure. They had been absorbing nutrients from this land for a long time, and if there were that many birds, then there was probably more than enough fertilizer waiting for him there. The plan got even better when Kratos found the perfect place for what he needed. Giant peaks standing right in the middle of the sea. That place was full of demonic seagulls, which meant one thing: there had to be plenty of bird droppings for his fertilizer. Zephyro immediately understood and asked, "Wait, you're planning to collect poop from those birds?" But there was a huge problem. The place was called the Peak of No Return for a reason. There was almost nothing to grab onto, and if anyone fell, they were either smashed against the rocks or dragged away by the waves below. Kratos simply said he already knew. In fact, this area wasn't even supposed to be accessible to players in the game. Yet somehow, during one of his past playthroughs, he had managed to climb it. Now everyone was standing in front of the same impossible cliff, wondering what crazy nonsense their Demon King was about to do. Countless people had tried climbing those walls before, and every single one had failed. Kratos told everyone to get ready. He was going to climb all the way to the top and throw bags of useful stuff down, so they needed to catch everything. And if this plan worked, everyone would finally have enough to eat. Bale looked around at the other demons and remembered how thin and hungry they had become. Honestly, they were in terrible shape. For the first time, he was actually thankful that their terrifying Demon King had suddenly turned into a farmer. Kratos remembered that during his 30th playthrough, he had finally decided to challenge this impossible place. After hundreds of failed attempts, he discovered a secret glitch, so he jumped, grabbed onto the cliff, and confidently started climbing. Everyone watched in silence as his hands slowly began sinking into the rock. Then Kratos opened his inventory and unequipped everything. The demons suddenly froze because his gear had disappeared, leaving them with a very unexpected view. Siri immediately turned away in embarrassment. Kratos quickly re-equipped his gear, pressed himself against the wall, then unequipped it again. Equip, unequip, equipped, unequip. He kept switching his gear on and off like a complete maniac, and every time he did, his body slightly slipped through the wall. The demons had absolutely no idea what they were watching, but somehow, this This ridiculous trick worked. A long time ago, Kratos had discovered that if you unequipped and re-equipped your gear at exactly the right moment while climbing, you could glitch slightly through solid walls. And after repeating the trick again and again, he suddenly reached the top like it was nothing. Then Baal looked up and decided that if His Majesty had promised to feed everyone, he needed to help too. Zephyro immediately told him to wait, but Baal ignored him and ran straight toward the cliff. Kratos turned around just in time to see the idiot throw himself at the wall. What the hell are you doing? Of course, Baal failed completely. He slammed into the rock and started falling. Now Kratos had to rush down and grab him. The only problem was that he had to use his wall glitching trick again while holding on to Baal, and Baal was the heaviest demon there. Kratos struggled to keep his grip and suddenly thought, wait, why am I even saving this guy? Baal was one of the 4 demons who had been talking about killing him. Even Baal looked confused. Why would the Demon King risk himself to save someone who was supposed to be his enemy? As Kratos struggled, an old memory suddenly came back to him. Back in his previous life, a younger student had once begged him for help. The guy was desperate and told Kratos that if he failed an important test, his life would be ruined. He asked Kratos to simply speak to the professor because everyone knew the professors liked and trusted him. Kratos probably could have helped, but at the time, he decided it wasn't his problem. He was afraid getting involved would damage his own reputation, so he told the guy to handle it himself. Looking back now, Kratos realized that maybe he could have done something. Maybe he could have helped, even just a little. And right now, Baal was hanging below him in exactly the same way, depending on him. This time, Kratos didn't want to turn away. He told himself to push harder and go beyond his limits. Maybe if he saved Baal now, that old memory would hurt a little less. Kratos gathered every bit of strength he had left. His arms screamed from the pressure, but he refused to let go. With one final effort, he threw Baal upward and got him to safety. Kratos was badly hurt from the strain, and Baal stared at him in disbelief. Why did you do that? You didn't have to save me. Kratos slowly got back up and gave him a simple answer, because this hurts less than abandoning someone who follows me. I'm not going to regret it again. Suddenly Baal started crying. Kratos looked at him and wondered if that student from his past would have reacted the same way if he had helped him back then. All Kratos could do now was quietly think, I'm sorry. Then the system suddenly appeared. It congratulated him for pulling out so much power from the Demon King's body without relying on any special skill. More importantly, he had earned the genuine admiration of one of the 4 great demons. A new system was unlocked. Happy points. From now on, whenever Kratos did something that made demons happy or earned their respect, he would receive HP. Kratos just stared at the message in confusion. Happy points? What am I supposed to do with those? Buy a lollipop? The system immediately answered him with the most offended response possible. This was a serious game system, and there was absolutely no way it would reward him with something as stupid as a lollipop. Kratos finally understood how the new system worked. Every time one of his soldiers became happy and got a proper meal, he earned happy points. Those points could be spent to recover the Demon King's real power by increasing his stamina, defense, mental strength, and magic power. Every stat had to reach 100% before he could fully regain the original Kratos' strength. Sounds great, right? The problem was the price. Just 10% stamina cost him 50 happy points, while upgrading a single skill cost a ridiculous 250. Kratos looked at the system and sighed. This was going to take a long time, but if he could get his farm working, he could feed everyone, make the demons happy, earn more points, and become stronger at the same time. It was basically the perfect plan. Plus, he had to admit, seeing everyone finally full and happy would feel pretty good. His ego would probably enjoy it even more. Meanwhile, Baal stood nearby watching him and thinking this Demon King still looked like someone who was going to get himself killed. Maybe saving him had been a mistake. Then Kratos suddenly appeared above them with bags full of bird droppings and yelled for everyone below to get ready. Before anyone could move, he threw the bags down. A disgusting mess came flying through the air, and the poor demons below had no choice but to catch it. Kratos simply told them to give it their best. A little later, the entire area was covered with soil, eggshells, feathers, and way too much poop. Kratos turned to Sergi and gave her a job. Since she had so many arms, she could chop and mix everything together. Sergi immediately exploded. I'm the Ice Monarch. My arms were not made for playing with poop. Kratos gave her one cold look and calmly said, fine, I'll give you another job instead, Azaret's job. Sergi instantly went quiet. Actually, chopping is fine. Kratos had honestly jumped a little when she yelled. These demons were scary, and Sergi was especially difficult to deal with, but he reminded himself that he was the Demon King. He just had to keep his cool and use his authority. Next, he ordered Hardtalk to flood the area because the soil needed moisture. Hardtalk warned him that getting all this wet would make the smell even worse. Kratos gave him one look, and suddenly Hardtalk was already flying through the air to do exactly what he was told. Kratos then checked on Baal and asked if he was feeling better. Baal nodded and said the ground was much softer now, just like Kratos had promised. The next step was covering the soil with feathers, but there was way too much land to handle with just a few people. There was only one option left. Kratos had to force every demon in the area to work. He knew some of them would complain, but he couldn't worry about that anymore. As the ruler of the demon realm, he was going to use every bit of authority he had. At the same time, inside the Demon King's city, one starving demon sat beside his young daughter. She was lying weakly in bed and quietly asked her father to eat her so he could survive. The father was horrified and begged her not to say something like that, but the girl only said she missed her mother. Another demon had once attacked them, and her mother had sacrificed herself to protect her daughter. Now the father was completely broken. He told his daughter that if she died too, he wouldn't have have any reason left to keep going. That was when Kratos suddenly arrived. The man jumped up in shock and demanded to know why the Demon King was there. Kratos looked at him and said, "If you have enough energy to yell at me, you have enough energy to work." Then he ordered his soldiers to take the man away. The father desperately called out for his daughter, but Kratos kept walking. "How many workers do we have?" 20. "Not enough. We need more than 30. But as he walked away, he looked back at the crying girl and remembered her from the game. In his old playthroughs, he had seen her before, and without thinking, he had always treated her like just another enemy. He never stopped to care about what happened to her. This time, things were different. Kratos immediately made a new rule. Demons were no longer allowed to eat other demons. From now on, everyone would work together to survive. He walked away and declared that he was still the tyrant ruler of this land, and if he wanted to reach his goal, everyone would have to make sacrifices. Under the burning sun, the already skinny demons were forced to keep working. One of them finally complained, "This is insane. We barely have enough energy to stand, and now we're wasting what little strength we have on a farm." Another demon warned him to watch his mouth, but he didn't stop. "We're going to die anyway, and even if this land becomes fertile, what are we even supposed to plant?" That was actually a fair question. Kratos suddenly appeared and said he would show them. During his earlier fight, he had noticed a strange flower growing near a tree. It was one of the few plants that could survive in this terrible land. He pointed at it and said, "That's what we're planting." Bale and the others were already out collecting more. The demon looked confused and said he knew that plant, but it wasn't food. Anyone who tried eating it usually ended up with terrible stomach pain. Kratos pulled one from the ground and looked at it carefully. "Maybe, but there's nothing else here to eat." The farm was almost ready, and now there was only one thing left to find out. Could they somehow turn this poisonous flower into their first real food? Whether Kratos' experiment would work or not, they were about to find out. One of the demons asked what kind of experiment he was talking about, and Kratos casually replied, "Well, around now, your daughter should be eating it." The guy froze for half a second before running off like his life depended on it. He was panicking, begging them to stop, and praying his daughter hadn't eaten the poisonous plant yet. He burst into the room, expecting the worst, only to find Bale standing there with his daughter. And the little girl had already eaten it. Not only was she perfectly fine, but she looked healthier, and happily said she was completely full. Her father couldn't believe it. "You're really okay?" She nodded and told him she had eaten the same thing yesterday too, because Bale and Zephyro had given it to her. Kratos stepped forward and told him to trust the process. In another world, humans had also figured out how to turn certain poisonous plants into safe food. The result was something people now knew as potatoes. The little girl became overwhelmed and thanked Kratos for helping someone like her. And just like that, for the first time in a long time, some of the Demon King's people were genuinely happy because they finally had something to eat. The system immediately rewarded Kratos with his first happy point. He looked at that single point, then looked at the little girl smiling in front of him. In the game, she had been nothing more than a monster he defeated without a second thought, but now she was just a hungry child who was happy to have food. The difference hit him hard. Maybe being the Demon King didn't mean he had to act cold and serious all the time. Kratos smiled warmly at her and told her to grow up strong and healthy. The other demons, however, completely misunderstood his smile. They looked at the little girl and immediately thought, "Oh no, is he planning to fatten her up and eat her later?" Somehow, even his nicest moment made everyone scared of him. The next chapter takes us to the harsh region of Chavin to Antor, a territory divided into 5 different zones, with Chavin being the farthest and toughest place to live. The nights were freezing, the days were burning hot, and almost nothing could grow there. In a land like this, even poisonous plants were considered valuable food. Most people would have given up, but humans had once found a way to survive in places like this. Back in the village, Flute's father knelt before Kratos and told him everything was ready. Kratos immediately ordered Bale to stomp all over the harvested plants and crush them completely. Then came the weird part. They would leave the batch outside to freeze overnight for 5 straight days, letting it freeze, and thaw again. After repeating the process enough times, the harmful parts would break down, turning the poisonous plants into something the demons could safely eat without getting sick. Once that was done, Kratos called Zephyro and told the team to get ready to make even more fertilizer. The farm was officially moving into full production. Soon, it was finally time to hand out the food. A long line formed, and Kratos stepped forward with a warning. "Listen carefully. There isn't much yet, so everyone can only take 2. Zephyro thought that was strange. They had plenty of land now, so why not just grow more? Kratos explained that their production was still way too small. Growing enough food for everyone would take time. First, he needed to prove to the demons that this strange new food was actually safe. Once they trusted it, they could increase production on a massive scale. But the demons standing in line were still terrified. Nobody wanted to be the first person to eat something they believed was poisonous. One demon said his daughter had already eaten it and was perfectly fine, but another immediately told him to shut up and look at the Demon King's face. Does that look like the face of someone giving away food just to be nice? Even so, one brave demon finally stepped forward. He grabbed a potato, stared at it for a moment, then threw it into his mouth and swallowed. Everyone waited. Nothing happened. The guy suddenly started crying and shouted, "Long live the Demon King." That was all the proof the others needed. The moment they saw he was alive, everyone rushed forward to eat too. For the first time, they were enjoying real food and getting full. Soon, the whole place erupted with cheers as the demons shouted that Kratos was incredible. Kratos listened to their celebration and frowned. There's definitely something weird about that chant. I'm changing it later. But Zephyro watched everything quietly and started thinking that maybe this crazy Demon King really could end the starvation in this land. With so many demons finally happy and full, Kratos' happy points quickly climbed to 51. Finally, he had enough to start improving himself. He opened his attributes and wondered which stat would help him survive the most right now. But before he could decide, Zephyro gathered the entire farm team and gave them a new order. They were going back to the village to spread the news. Real, edible food could actually be grown in this land. Any demon willing to come and help with the farm would receive vouchers they could exchange for potatoes. Kratos watched Zephyro in surprise. For once, the guy was actually being useful, and just like that, the farm began growing fast. Demons started harvesting potatoes, planting more crops, and working together to produce fertilizer. Even Sergi, the proud ice monarch who had once refused to go anywhere near manure, was now stuck helping prepare it. Slowly but surely, Kratos' ridiculous farming plan was turning the dead land into something nobody thought was possible. A place where demons could finally eat. Hardtalk kept moistening the soil while poor Azaret was still tied up as Kratos' personal lightning rod. Kratos looked over the field and casually told them to move him 10 steps to the left. Yeah, right there. Perfect. The demons pinned Azaret down again, and another lightning bolt came crashing into him. Kratos sighed. Man, doing this every day just to make enough nitrogen is exhausting. But at least they had finally collected a decent amount, so it was time for the next step. The problem was that the farm had grown so large that even with all their resources, spreading everything across the land was becoming a nightmare. While Kratos was busy planning how to cover the whole field, Azaret was lying there begging for one thing. Please, just kill me already. Kratos answered with another lightning strike without even looking at him. Deep down, Kratos had a bigger problem. He needed workers who could keep going all day without complaining. Maybe he had no choice but to wait for the reinforcements he had already called for. Earlier, he had asked Zephyro whether he had actually summoned the Star Masters. Zephyro said yes, and for now, he had ordered them to stop fighting and return home so they could help with farming. The problem? Not a single reply had arrived. Kratos started wondering if the messengers had starved to death somewhere on the road. He desperately needed more help because spreading manure across this massive farm was becoming too much for him. Meanwhile, far away at the Death Cliff, the first zone of the region, a demon reported some surprising news. Apparently, Lord Kratos had started developing agriculture and was already producing edible food. The mustached demon scoffed. He believed Kratos was only doing all this because he was afraid of war. After all, whenever a demon died, Suol, the father of the dead, became stronger. So maybe Kratos was trying to stop the war so neither side could keep gaining power. Suol then asked whether the messengers sent to the other regions had been dealt with. The demon confirmed that nobody else knew Kratos wanted to stop the war. Suol smiled. That was exactly what he wanted. Every demon needed to keep starving because their suffering would eventually become fuel for his power. Once he gathered enough strength, he would become the true demon lord. Then he called for Fikimir and gave him one simple order: destroy everything Kratos had built, especially the farm. During one freezing night, Azaret was still tied to his post when Fikimir walked past him. He looked at the poor guy and thought, man, Lord Kratos is brutal. He really turned this guy into a living example. Still, Fikimir told him not to worry because Sarathal would avenge him. Then he summoned a massive army of spirits and ordered them to destroy the farmland completely. The spirits rushed forward and soon discovered a huge pile of fertilizer that Kratos had been collecting. One of them recognized it immediately. Isn't this the famous manure Lord Kratos has been protecting? Fikimir grinned. Perfect. Spread it everywhere. Ruin everything he's built. Azaret watched from the side and remembered Kratos explaining that the manure needed to be mixed deep into the soil and broken down properly. The problem was that Kratos never had enough workers to do the job quickly. His demons were already weak and starving, so even simple farm work took forever. Now Fikimir thought he had discovered the perfect way to destroy Kratos' entire plan. The spirits spread manure across the land, buried it, and worked like crazy to make sure the farm would never function properly. One spirit eventually complained, "This land is huge. Are we seriously still doing this?" The others immediately yelled at him to stop slacking. They had to keep spreading and burying everything until Kratos' farm was completely ruined. Nearby, another spirit noticed that spirit #27118 was working incredibly hard. What happened to you? You're actually working like crazy today. The spirit shrugged and said, I don't know. I just feel good. It's like I'm finally doing something useful. His partner stared at him and called him an idiot. Then he smiled and added, whatever. Today, I want to be an idiot too. Let's destroy this whole place. The spirits laughed and kept working harder. They were so proud of themselves that they didn't even notice the sun beginning to rise. The moment sunlight touched them, they started disappearing. These spirits were extremely weak to sunlight, but strangely, none of them were angry. They were actually satisfied. They had done something productive before dying. As their souls floated away, Fikimir was left behind crying. My children, they really did it. They were the best. He watched them disappear and told himself they could finally rest. All he wanted now was to see Kratos' face when he discovered what they had done. Back at the Demon King's storage house, there was another problem waiting. Huge piles of potatoes had been harvested, but Kratos still needed to prepare them properly. He explained that the potatoes were currently dormant. Even if they were planted right away, they wouldn't grow because they were basically asleep. Kratos compared it to a sleeping potato that had suddenly been ripped out of the ground by its hair. The potato, in his imagination, practically fainted from the shock. Kratos knew exactly what to do. He needed to keep the potatoes at around 4°C for 2 or 3 weeks, then move them somewhere warmer. That would help break their dormant state and prepare them for planting. While everyone else was worried about their farm being destroyed, Kratos was already planning the next stage of production. The Demon King wasn't just trying to survive anymore. He was slowly turning the entire demon realm into a giant farm. Kratos was hoping Sergi would help with the farm, but lately she was completely disgusted by the whole fertilizer situation and clearly wanted nothing to do with it. Hardtalk wasn't exactly happy either, and Kratos knew both of them were still one bad moment away from turning against him, so he had to be careful. He even tried raising the temperature by making everyone do squats, but the poor demons were already so weak that they barely started before collapsing. Kratos finally sighed and turned to Zephyro. Forget this. We're going to the farm. He had to do something, even if it meant using his own power. At the very least, he could add more nitrogen to the soil. But when they arrived, Kratos suddenly stopped. The entire farm was steaming. The soil had been completely mixed up. The smell was horrible, and somehow, the land looked perfect for planting. Kratos stared at it in disbelief. What the hell happened here? He had no idea that the enemy's attack had accidentally done exactly what his farm needed. From the shadows, Fikimir was watching and panicking. It worked. I actually destroyed everything. Except, he was completely wrong. Bale suddenly appeared behind him, grabbed him by the ears, and dragged him out. Found this creep hiding over here. Kratos immediately recognized Fikimir. After playing the game so many times, he knew exactly who this guy was. He was one of the bosses from the Death Cliff area. Kratos looked at him and asked, "What are you doing here?" Fikimir opened his mouth to answer, but Kratos punched him straight in the face before he could say a word. Zephyro stared at him. "Why did you hit him before he even answered?" Kratos simply shrugged. He was hiding. I figured punching him would save time. Fikimir called the Demon King cruel, only to get punched again and again. Eventually, Kratos' hands started hurting from beating him without getting a single useful answer, so he opened his system, dumped all his available points into stamina, and immediately went back to punching. After taking enough punishment, Fikimir finally cracked and confessed everything. He had been ordered to destroy the farm, and now Kratos understood the real problem. Suol had been the one stopping the reinforcements from reaching him. The reason was obvious. Every time a demon died, Suol became stronger. Zephyro suggested that if Kratos defeated Suol, the other demons would see it as a warning, but Kratos didn't care about becoming some legendary ruler. He just wanted to live peacefully and grow his farm. The problem was that killing Suol wouldn't be easy. Once he died, he could turn into a spirit, making him extremely difficult to hit. His territory was also massive, full of cliffs, high ground, and places where he could easily hide. Kratos thought about it for a moment and came to a simple conclusion. If the pest was hiding inside its nest, then there was only one solution: destroy the whole nest. Meanwhile, Flute was still watching Azaret tied up at the farm. The guy had been there for so long that even she was starting to feel bad for him. She asked what he was thinking, and Azaret angrily replied that thanks to his sacrifice, everyone now had food. Flute sincerely thanked him, but that only made him angrier. "Stop humiliating the great Azaret," he shouted. He promised that the moment he was free, Flute would be the first person he killed. He was already imagining himself breaking free and taking down Kratos himself. Then he heard Kratos' voice nearby. Music was playing, and the demons were celebrating because another lightning post had been installed. Everyone was excited because the new setup would help them produce even more food. Azaret's eyes lit up. Finally, maybe this means they're going to release me. Nope. Instead, Kratos simply placed the post beside him and zapped both targets again. At this point, Azaret was almost used to it. He just got a little more crispy every time. Fikimir, watching from nearby, started screaming that they couldn't keep doing this to Azaret. Kratos ignored him and kept working. Zap. Another strike. Fikimir begged him to stop, but Kratos suddenly noticed a raven nearby. His expression changed immediately. He knew exactly what it was. A messenger bird. That meant someone was watching and receiving information. Kratos instantly realized Suol had been keeping an eye on the farm, so the guy who had tried to ruin his crops was sitting somewhere far away, watching everything. Kratos wasn't going to let that slide. Later, under the blazing sun, Flute was happily working in the soil when Azaret asked what she was doing. Flute explained that since the 4 generals had helped so much, she wanted to do her part too. Azaret called her an idiot and told her she was wasting her time. Fikimir had already prepared that entire section of land, so she should find something more useful to do. Flute walked over to Fikimir and asked if that was really true. She learned that he had prepared the soil and even endured countless lightning strikes for everyone's sake. She thought that was incredibly kind. Fikimir suddenly became shy and admitted that hearing her say that made all his suffering worth it. Azaret, however, still tried to push Flute away. He told her she wasn't helping and that the only thing he knew was that heating the potatoes somehow made them better. Flute immediately lit up. "Then I'll help with that." She thanked him and ran off. Azaret watched her disappear and muttered, "What can a low-ranked demon like her possibly accomplish?" Back at the castle, Zephyro was still suspicious of Kratos' next move. "My lord, I'm not sure this plan is going to work. You already know it's a trap. Why would he come here?" Kratos calmly answered, "He won't come himself. He already knew the enemy was hiding behind someone else, and now he just had to figure out how to drag the real mastermind out." Kratos already had a plan. First, he would let Suol send his strongest subordinates, and every single one of them would get wiped out. He had already given Bale the order. No one was supposed to escape. Of course, Suol was watching everything from a distance and sneered at Kratos. "What an idiot. Does he really think I'll just throw away my own soldiers?" Losing Fikimir hurt, but Suol didn't care about anything except one thing: destroying Kratos' farm. So he ordered his specters to attack the crops and destroy every last potato. Nothing could be left behind. The ghosts rushed into the storage house, ready to wreck everything, but Kratos was already waiting inside. He looked at them and smiled. "Just as I thought. I knew you guys would come. welcome to your cemetery. Kratos remembered fighting these specters during his first playthrough. They were part of Sual's elite forces, and they were a nightmare because they always attacked in huge groups. Worse, if they physically touched you, they could latch onto your body, drain your life force, and even steal the abilities you had equipped. But Kratos knew their weakness: magic, especially lightning. He looked at the incoming spirits and casually asked, "So, who wants to get fried first?" The specters instantly realized something was wrong. They tried to escape, but it was already too late. The doors slammed shut, and strange blood seals appeared around the room. The blood belonged to Kratos. He had turned the entire warehouse into a giant trap. Then he unleashed a massive lightning attack that lit up the whole place. "Now!" Kratos shouted. The demon soldiers rushed in from every side. Without their ghostly advantage, the specters were completely overwhelmed. Kratos watched his plan work perfectly, and couldn't help thinking, "Man, this is actually genius. Maybe I really was born to be the Demon King." He even said it out loud. The only problem was that a few smaller spirits had survived. They zipped around the battlefield and fired lightning everywhere, making things chaotic. Then, suddenly, Flute popped out from behind the pile of potatoes. One of the spirits spotted her and immediately rushed toward her, ready to drain her life force. Her father screamed in panic, but Kratos was too far away. There was no way his lightning could reach her in time. Acting on pure instinct, Kratos grabbed a potato, charged it with lightning, and threw it at the spirit. He honestly expected nothing to happen, but the potato smacked the ghost right in the head, and something completely unexpected happened. The spirit tried to drain the potato's life force, and somehow succeeded. Right in front of everyone, the potato suddenly sprouted leaves. Kratos froze. Then he understood. These spirits didn't just drain life, they accelerated the aging process of whatever they touched. And because potatoes were living organisms, that meant the spirits could basically fast forward their growth. The remaining specters panicked and fled. Kratos grabbed Flute and told her she had done a great job, but she was still shaken and quickly ran away. Kratos then turned toward the others and made his decision. "Enough. We're done being scared of Sual. From now on, we're going on the offensive." Meanwhile, Azeroth was still tied to the same cross, staring up at the sky and wondering what had happened to his life. Who am I? Where am I? What am I even living for? He looked at the sunlight and admitted that, despite everything, he actually felt happy just being able to see the sky every day. The only problem was that he was constantly starving. Then Flute appeared with a cheerful update. The farm was doing great. They were harvesting huge amounts of potatoes, and Kratos was even building a new army. The moment Azeroth heard the word potatoes, his eyes widened. Flute smiled and said she would give him a little. Then she tossed one straight at him. It smacked him right in the eye. "Ow, I'm going to kill you," Azeroth screamed. Flute threw another, then another. Two hit him in the face, and one landed right in his mouth. But the moment he tasted it, he froze. Despite everything, it was delicious. That single bite made him so happy that Kratos earned another happy point. His total had now reached 302. Kratos didn't even know who had given him the last point, but he didn't care. More points meant more power, and he needed every bit of it before confronting Sual. He gathered his army and ordered everyone to get ready. They finally reached the bridge leading towards Sual's territory when a few spirits suddenly shouted, "They're cutting the bridge!" And sure enough, the bridge was destroyed. Everyone expected Kratos to stop, but he simply jumped. The spirits laughed and called him crazy, but Kratos knew exactly what he was doing. He used his ridiculous equipment glitch again. He turned his back, shifted his position, and activated the trick. One moment he was below the cliff, and the next, he was already standing on top. The spirits stared in horror. "What the hell is that Demon King?" they whispered before fleeing. Kratos smiled. Everything was going exactly according to plan. Sual watched from a distance and immediately ordered the remaining spirits to kill Kratos while he was separated from his army. Kratos charged forward alone, but the spirits surrounded him and tried to grab him. Just before they could touch him, Kratos activated the glitch again and sank straight through the ground. The spirits searched everywhere, but he suddenly reappeared in the middle of them. They surrounded him from every direction and laughed. Even the Demon King would eventually run out of stamina. Kratos simply looked at them and said, "I'm a veteran player." He had already died hundreds of times in this game. He knew the map, the enemies, the attacks, and every dirty trick they could use. Then suddenly, something started falling from the sky. One potato, then another, then dozens. Within seconds, potatoes were raining down from outside like a full-on potato bombardment. The spirits looked up in confusion as Kratos stood there with a confident smile. The Demon King's counterattack had officially begun. The moment the potatoes hit the spirits, something completely unexpected happened. The ghosts started getting absorbed and transformed, disappearing one after another. Zephyro watched in shock, thinking, "I honestly wasn't sure this crazy plan would work this time." But once again, Kratos had somehow pulled it off. He had already explained the strategy earlier. Gather all the enemies in one place, then bombard them with the special potatoes. Simple, stupid looking, and somehow completely effective. But Kratos had another advantage nobody else had. After 19 full playthroughs, he knew this map better than anyone. Every shortcut, hidden path, weird corner, and secret glitch was basically burned into his brain. While exploring the area in the game, he had once noticed a strange structure with a texture that looked completely out of place. He attacked it just to see what would happen, and sure enough, the wall opened up. Behind it was a hidden cave leading straight to Sual. He had even discovered strange items along the way, including a metamorphosis elixir and a compressed soul made from countless corpses. He had no idea what those things were for, but right now, he didn't have time to worry about them. Back outside, the demons were celebrating because they finally had food. Watching everyone eat brought back a painful memory for Kratos. He suddenly remembered his grandmother telling him that he looked like he hadn't been eating properly and promising to cook dinner for him that night. But instead of going home for dinner, he ended up being taken away by ambulance. The memory hit him hard, and his expression changed. He looked at the demons eating around him and made a promise. Anyone who gets in the way of my people having enough food will be completely destroyed. Bale stepped forward and offered to help him fight Seol, but Kratos immediately shut him down. No, your job is carrying potatoes. Bale looked confused. Kratos simply added, that's what the boss does. Meanwhile, Seol stood before the Great Spirit of Ice, summoning more monsters from the freezing darkness and preparing to build an army strong enough to crush Kratos, but his dramatic speech suddenly stopped when a boot slammed directly into his face. Seol looked up in disbelief. How are you already here? Kratos simply shrugged. Not your problem. I'm here to get rid of this pest. Seol laughed and called him an idiot for coming alone. He was confident Kratos had never seen his true power. Unfortunately for him, Kratos had seen it 19 times. He knew exactly what was coming. During his first attempts at beating Seol, Kratos had spent hours climbing through those mountains and destroying spirit after spirit. Every defeated creature would be absorbed into a strange crystal that collected their souls. Once Seol had gathered enough energy, he would summon even stronger monsters. Kratos had to defeat wave after wave until Seol finally revealed his real ability. A giant tornado would appear in the sky, and Seol would smile before saying, "You're strong, Kratos. I'll give you that." Then he would copy Kratos' power and become an almost perfect version of him. That was the terrifying part. Seol could copy an opponent's stats and abilities. Normally, this was a nightmare because players reached this boss near the end of the game, meaning their characters were ridiculously powerful by that point. Seol simply copied all of that power and became just as strong. But this time, Kratos had one huge advantage. Seol could only copy the power Kratos currently had, and right now, Kratos was still far weaker than the original Demon King. Seol charged at him, but Kratos instantly opened his system and dumped points into dexterity. He dodged the first attack and punched Seol straight in the stomach. Seol swung again, so Kratos boosted his strength and started trading blows with him. Seol couldn't believe what he was seeing. This is impossible. How are you already fighting at full power? Kratos calmly answered, if you want to run a farm properly, you need to keep your head clear too. Seol then prepared his lightning spell. He cut his hand to activate it, but Kratos was already boosting his magic power and mental strength. He fired his own lightning attack first, and this time, Kratos' lightning completely overpowered Seol's. The blast tore through him and reduced his body to a pile of sludge. Everyone stood there thinking it was finally over. Then the system appeared. Kratos had finally unlocked all the required attributes. A new reward became available, the Farmer's Throne. Kratos summoned it, and a giant throne descended from the sky. It looked almost like a Game of Thrones chair, except instead of swords, it was covered in pitchforks, straw, watering cans, and other farming tools. Kratos stared at it with pure excitement. Finally, he was getting some proper equipment, but then the system gave him another warning. The battle wasn't over yet. Kratos sighed. Of course, there's always a second phase. And just like that, Seol's body began transforming. The sludge exploded upward, and he turned into an ancient dragon. Kratos stepped back and stared. Okay, that guy has a ridiculous amount of HP. But before Seol could attack, Bale suddenly came flying in from behind and kicked him. Then the rest of the squad rushed in behind him. Kratos smiled. This was exactly like the final stage of the game. Seol hesitated and even started getting emotional. For a moment, he actually asked if they could just talk things out. Nobody cared. The entire group charged him. Every demon joined the fight, even the farmer. They overwhelmed Seol from every direction while Kratos stood back and watched. These were the same demons who had been starving and barely strong enough to stand not long ago. Now they were fighting together to protect their food and their future. Kratos looked at them and realized how far they had come. Then he decided it was finally time. He raised his hand and summoned the farmer's throne. Clouds began swirling above them. The sky darkened, and the massive throne slowly descended from the heaven. It came crashing straight towards Seol as Kratos prepared to finish the fight once and for all. Boom! The throne crashes down and completely wipes out Seol, leaving a massive crater behind. Kratos just stands there staring, completely stunned, while the demons look at the crater in disbelief. Then they explode into cheers. They can't believe their demon king just finished a boss by dropping an entire throne on his head. Kratos has no idea what to say because, honestly, that wasn't even his plan. But hey, a win is a win, so he joins the celebration. The enemy is gone, the farm is alive, the demons finally have food, and for once, everything seems to be going perfectly. Nearby, Fikamir's body starts glowing softly, while the entire battlefield has been transformed into rich, fertile land. The potatoes are ready, the biggest threat is gone, and now it's finally time to start planting for real. But then something strange happened. Seol's crystal suddenly starts shaking, and the system alerts Kratos that he has defeated that boss for the 20th time. Kratos instantly realizes the game remembers his past victory. Because this was his 20th clear, a hidden event has been triggered. Something trapped inside the crystal is about to awaken, and apparently what comes out depends on how the crystal was treated. Thick mist starts pouring from it, and Kratos slowly walks closer. Everyone watches nervously. Then, out of nowhere, a tiny dragon appears. It looks surprisingly cute, gives Kratos a little smile, and immediately starts asking for a steak. Kratos picks up the baby dragon, and the little guy clings to him while repeating, "Steak, steak." The dragon is actually happy. He thought he would be born into this world without ever having a father, but now this strange demon king is holding him. Kratos looks at him and says, "You're actually pretty cute." The baby dragon starts trembling because he completely misunderstands the situation. On the way back, the whole army is celebrating dancing and shouting that they're going to have a huge feast. The dragon hears all this and starts getting nervous. Then Kratos casually looks at him and says, "First, you need to grow big before we eat you." The poor dragon nearly loses his mind. "I knew it. I'm being fattened up." He's now completely convinced that his new dad plans to turn him into dinner. But when they return, the dragon sees something he never expected. The entire demon kingdom is outside celebrating their victory. Families are cheering, parents are hugging their kids, and everyone is smiling as the demon king returns. For the first time, the little dragon realizes this place might not be so terrifying after all. Later though, he's hiding in the corner of a room, shaking whenever Kratos looks at him. Kratos has no idea why the little guy is acting so scared. He's actually busy trying to figure out what dragons are supposed to eat. He assumes they probably need expensive gemstones or some rare magical food, which is obviously impossible because this kingdom barely has enough potatoes. Meanwhile, Zephyro brings another problem. The farm still isn't ready. Proper farming requires raised soil mound, but the ground here is packed with rocks. The demons are already exhausted from all the work, and moving those rocks is taking forever. Even the little dragon, whom we're just calling Steak now, is sitting in the corner thinking his future is finished. He's sure he's either going to be worked to death or eaten. Kratos looks over the land and realizes this place feels more like a mining site than a farm. If everyone keeps wasting energy like this, they'll burn through their food before the next harvest even starts. Then hunger will return, and the whole kingdom will fall apart again. Frustrated, Kratos wishes he had some ridiculous protagonist power that could solve everything instantly. But then he notices Flute quietly digging away, working harder than almost everyone else. That snaps him out of it. Instead of complaining, he needs to find a solution. And then things get even worse. Someone suddenly screams, "Razor wind." Kratos immediately remembers this disaster from the game. These winds are basically flying blades, and anyone caught outside can be seriously hurt within seconds. He orders everyone to hide behind the rocks, while the deadly wind tears across the land. Even from a distance, the pressure is terrifying. One thing is certain, farming in this place is going to be a nightmare. But Flute suddenly notices Azaret still tied to the lightning post and runs straight toward him. Her father screams for her to stop. Kratos orders her to come back. She ignores everyone and keeps running. Kratos quickly pushes Steak into her father's arms and takes off after her. "Anyone who follows me stays back." Bale shouts that it's too dangerous, but Kratos knows he can't just stand there. He can't afford to lose their lightning rod or let a young worker get caught in the storm. Flute desperately tries to free Azaret, but Azaret tells her to run. He knows the post is impossible to move. Even the 4 heavenly kings wouldn't be able to pull it out. Kratos finally reaches them and realizes once again that farming in this world feels less like agriculture and more like going to war. He tells Flute to move, charges forward, and delivers a flying kick straight into the lightning post. Crack! The post breaks and crashes to the ground, but the razor wind is already tearing through the area. Everyone is struggling to stay standing as Kratos looks at the chaos around him. He came here to grow potatoes. Somehow, he's ended up fighting natural disasters just to keep the farm alive. Kratos grabs Flute before the razor wind can take her, and somehow throws the lightning rod over his shoulder at the same time. The wind is so powerful that even Steak can feel the pressure from a distance. He knows his new dad isn't strong enough to handle this, yet Kratos is still running straight into the storm to save everyone. Then Kratos stumbles. The wind is slicing across the ground so hard that he loses his grip, drops the lightning rod, and crashes down. That's when little Steak finally decides it's his turn to help. The baby dragon takes off into the sky, flies straight toward the storm, and positions himself right in front of the raging wind. He takes a deep breath and unleashes a massive blast of ice. The freezing attack hits the center of the storm and slows the razor wind down just enough. Kratos, barely conscious, realizes what Steak has done. The little guy actually used his power to save everyone, but the attack was way too much for such a young dragon. The tornado keeps pushing forward, but thankfully, the rest of the crew arrives and manages to carry everyone out of danger. Somehow, the tiny dragon just became one of the farm's most important workers. Back at the castle, Kratos is lying in bed, completely exhausted, and while he's out cold, Hardtalk and Sergi quietly enter the room. These two aren't here to check on him either. Hardtalk says that while the Demon King is unconscious, this is their perfect chance to cut him down. Sergi agrees, and the two make a deal. Once Kratos is gone, they'll deal with Bale and Azaret, then decide between themselves who becomes the next Demon King. They stand beside the bed, ready to make their move, but then they suddenly freeze. Kratos' face doesn't look anything like someone who's asleep. He has this terrifying expression that makes them wonder if he's actually been awake the whole time. Still, they convince themselves this is their only chance and prepare to attack. Just before they can do anything, Azaret and Bale walk in. Azaret looks completely worn out after spending 10 chapters getting blasted like a living lightning rod, while Bale simply tells them, the Demon King is sleeping, don't mess with him. Hardtalk looks at Azaret in disbelief. I understand why that muscle brain is still loyal, but you? Why are you protecting this farmer? Azaret admits he's only doing it this once. Next time, he still plans to kill Kratos, but right now, he owes the guy his life. Hardtalk argues that these potatoes have already caused nothing but trouble, and if the farming plan fails, everyone will starve anyway. Azaret gives him a surprisingly simple answer. That's how it worked. If you don't want to starve, you have to risk your life. He admits he'd much rather fight in a war than work on a farm, but this is the situation they're stuck with. Hardtalk shakes his head and calls them all idiots before walking away, warning that they'll regret this someday. Then Kratos suddenly yawns and wakes up. The first thing he sees is Azaret standing there. Azaret immediately starts explaining himself. Don't get the wrong idea, Demon King. I'm only here because I owe you for saving my life." Kratos narrows his eyes and asks the only thing that matters to him. "Why is my lightning rod walking around and talking?" Azaret freezes. He barely gets a second to react before, zap, another lightning strike hits him. His clothes are destroyed, and before he knows it, he's being dragged straight back toward the lightning post. Kratos is ready to return to farming, but Bale tells him they've almost cleared all the rock. Zephyro has been helping organize the workers. When Kratos arrives, he sees Zephyro directing everyone like a proper foreman. Kratos asks where all the rocks went, and Zephyro points toward the sky. There's Steak, flying around with rocks in his mouth and carrying them far away. The little dragon is doing everything he can to help. He knows he's too small to fight another Razorwind, but moving rocks, that's something he can handle. Kratos calls him over, picks him up, and starts petting him with a suspiciously happy grin. Steak doesn't even panic anymore. In fact, he seems to enjoy it. Kratos is feeling pretty confident now. If another Razorwind shows up, he has a secret weapon. As long as he can predict when it arrives, Steak can help counter it. Zephyro then brings up another problem. They're running low on potatoes to reward the workers. Should they start saving more? Kratos shakes his head. He's already figured out the two biggest problems standing between them and a successful farm. The first is natural disasters. The second is cost. If they can break through those two walls, the farm can finally grow without constantly falling apart. Meanwhile, back inside the castle, Sergi finally removes her helmet after spending the entire day working in the field. She's completely covered in manure and looks absolutely exhausted after all the farming work. Then someone knocks on her door. A voice from outside asks to speak with her. Sergi instantly recognizes it. It's the Demon King. Her expression changes immediately, and she quickly replies, "There's nothing we need to talk about." But judging by the voice outside, Kratos clearly isn't planning on leaving anytime soon.